Good morning. It is Monday, the 15th of June. I'm Maeve McMahon, and this is Europe Today, your daily date with European news and analysis, live here on Euronews. Coming up, World Cup fever. German fans are on a high after their team's comfortable 7-1 victory over the Caribbean island nation of Curacao in Houston last night. Meanwhile, Turkish supporters are licking their wounds following a surprising 2-0 defeat to Australia. Sweden and the Netherlands also celebrating either victories and draws of their own. All eyes now on Belgium's Red Devils, who join the action tonight as they take on Egypt. And former World Cup champions Spain are stepping into the limelight too. We'll have all the latest from on and off the pitch with our special correspondent, Vincenzo Genovese. And we'll be live in Evian, where President Donald Trump will join the G7 after spending his weekend celebrating and announcing the imminent reopening of the Strait of Hormuz. In an extravagant cage-fighting-inspired party that cost $60 million and attracted 4,000 spectators, the US president even got phone calls from all across the globe, from Ukraine's President Zelensky and Russia's President Vladimir Putin. But first, to developing news this morning that the US and Iran have confirmed they've reached a framework for a peace deal. Global oil prices have dropped amid fresh hopes that this could reopen the Strait of Hormuz and end the greatest energy supply crisis in recent history. For more, we can head now to Dubai, where Euronews correspondent Jane Witherspoon is standing by for us this morning. So, Jane, a little glimmer of hope that a deal is within reach.
Good morning. Yes, absolutely. After 108 days of war with Iran, President Trump has declared that a peace deal has been reached. Clearly in a happy mood after those weekend 80th birthday celebrations, he took to his Truth Social and he wrote, "The deal with the Islamic Republic of Iran is now complete. Congratulations to all. I hereby fully authorise the toll-free opening of the Strait of Hormuz. Ships of the world, start your engines. Let the oil flow."
So that's the view from President Donald Trump. Pretty upbeat. But what about the Iranians, Jane? How have they been reacting to this deal?
Well, of course, they have responded. Tehran has since confirmed that the text of the Memorandum of Understanding, obviously this is still an MOU at the moment, they have said it will be signed and agreed upon on Friday in Switzerland. That said, it is pending following the verification of US commitments, including the lifting of the US blockade on the Strait of Hormuz. And of course, Pakistan and also Qatar have been very instrumental in negotiating this peace deal. It is hoped across the region that this will establish a framework for long-lasting peace across the Middle East.
Absolutely. The expectations are extremely high. But the devil, of course, will be in the details. Jane Witherspoon, thank you so much for that live update there from Dubai. And off the back of President Trump's announcement, the leaders of France, Germany, the UK and Italy have all called for the immediate reopening of the Strait of Hormuz in order to stabilise the world's economy. This as G7 meeting begins today in Evian on the shores of Lake Geneva, with President Donald Trump set to arrive later today. For more, we can go straight to our Europe editor, Maria Tadeo, who's following the three-day talks for us. Good morning, Maria. So leaders there gathering and just this news landing, how have they been welcoming it?
Yes, good morning, Maeve. Indeed, the news of this framework agreement between the United States and Iran has already swept the G7, which you see behind me in Evian. That is Lake Geneva. Of course, that is where the G7 leaders, including President Trump, will be gathering for 3 days. Yesterday night, already a reaction from the host, the French President Emmanuel Macron, putting out a video message at midnight indicating that he welcomes what would be or should indicate the end of hostilities between the two sides, but also reiterating that the G7 wants to hear the details and the fallout from this deal. Also, there will be leaders representing the Arab world, including Qatar and the United Arab Emirates, as well as Egypt, around the table. He also put out a statement alongside Germany, Italy and the UK, insisting that this is good news if a deal indeed is put to paper. But they also repeated that they must see the reopening unconditional of the Strait of Hormuz. Of course, that is critical for the global energy market and the Europeans have repeated, insisted and reiterated that they will not, under any circumstances, pay in order to pass through the Strait of Hormuz. The other big question, and the Europeans also made it clear last night in anticipation to this G7 meeting, is what's actually going to happen with the nuclear program in Iran. The French president insisting that Iran must never have a nuclear weapon. At this point, it is unclear what are the details of this agreement landed by the U.S. and Iran, but this is going to dominate talks today. As you say, Maeve, we are expecting the president of the U.S. to arrive tonight. He will be greeted by the French president, and then there will be a working dinner connected to the geopolitics immediately at around 7:30 p.m. for the Europeans, certainly the European part of this G7, but also Canada and Japan. The focus is the implications on the energy market, but also knowing specifically what is in this agreement. At this point, there are more questions, of course, than answers.
Indeed, as you say, Iran to dominate those talks there in Evian. But what else, Maria, is on the agenda?
Well, yes, there's also a very geopolitical, we should say, G7. It is also going to be a difficult G7 for Emmanuel Macron, the host, because when you're the host, you have to rally everyone around you and you have to make sure there is unity around the G7 for diplomats that we spoke to with yesterday. They repeated that already the fact that President Trump is going to stay for 3 days indicate there could be a level of unity not seen in the G7 since his return. We should also note that on Wednesday, and that is a personal touch from President Emmanuel Macron, the U.S. president will also head to Versailles for a dinner. That was the way, perhaps, to keep him engaged for 3 days here. The big topic, of course, will be the war in Ukraine. For the Europeans, they say that this is an opportunity to really talk about the conditions for a real negotiation. But we have seen overnight another real pounding of Ukraine, including a cathedral in Kyiv. For the G7, there's also a question of technology when it comes to artificial intelligence. The CEOs of some of the major Silicon Valley companies, including OpenAI and Anthropic, with a ban over the weekend, shocking in the world of technology, from the U.S. government to non-nationals. Basically, a ban to use some of the top-tier technology from Anthropic to non-Americans will also feature in a working lunch. And then there's, of course, a question of geopolitical and geoeconomic imbalances. China very much in focus. For diplomats here, they repeat that they are not naive. The relationship between the United States and Europe, and therefore also a large part of the G7, has fundamentally changed, but they still insist the U.S. is a country that you simply cannot ignore. There is enormous diplomatic and military might behind President Trump. So in the areas in which you can work together to get agreements and get things going moving forward, you still need to engage with President Trump. Everyone else, the Europeans say they will push for their own interests.
OK, Maria Tadeo, thank you so much for that live update. Now moving on, as EU foreign ministers gather in Luxembourg today for talks, Russia has launched a round of ballistic missile strikes on Kyiv overnight, striking, as you heard there from Maria, the capital's historic Assumption Cathedral. That's one of Ukraine's most significant religious and cultural sites. This as both Ukraine and Moldova are set to formally open the first phase of negotiations on joining the European Union tonight in Luxembourg. For the latest, we can go straight over to Luxembourg, where our correspondent Marid Gwynn is standing by for us this morning. Good morning, Marid. At this moment, a long time coming for both Ukraine and Moldova.
Yes, indeed, Maeve. As you just said there, tonight, both Ukraine and Moldova formally opening this first phase of talks on joining the EU. Both countries did file for EU application in the wake of Russia's invasion of Ukraine in 2022. But then Viktor Orban's veto on the opening of talks with Ukraine scuppered that completely, held Moldova back as well, because both Ukraine and Moldova have been informally paired on their journey towards becoming EU members. The election of Peter Magyar, of course, in April changed all of that, and that's allowed for these talks to kick off here in Luxembourg later tonight. And I'm pleased to say I'm now joined by Moldova's Deputy Prime Minister for European Integration, Kristina Gerasimov. Minister, really good to have you with us on Euronews. Firstly, can you tell us how significant a moment this is for Moldova, especially considering that the issue of EU membership does divide the population, as we've seen in recent votes, including in the referendum back in 2024?
It is indeed a historic milestone for my country today. The fact that we are moving forward with the opening of negotiations by clusters, that means the beginning of a complex reform process meant to transform our society, democratic institutions, our economy, to prepare basically Moldova with the backbone of the reforms necessary for EU accession. This is also a strong signal for us that the EU is also getting ready to receive new member states, and that is always a very good sign.
I want to ask you about this process which has coupled both Moldova and Ukraine on their membership bids. This has meant you being held back by the veto of other countries, including Hungary. This could come back to become another problem. Is it time now for Ukraine and Moldova to be decoupled so that you can progress based on your own merits?
We're very grateful that this opportunity has been provided for us, unfortunately, by the tragic circumstances that Ukraine is still going through. Ukraine is still fighting for democracy and for the security of Moldova, of Europe as such. At the same time, European Union enlargement policy is a merit-based process, which means that the reforms that every candidate country is conducting depends on their own merits. So we very much hope that we will be able as soon as possible to open the next clusters and continue with our own reform pathways.
So that means being decoupled from Ukraine, because we know that Russia is very willing and able to capitalize on the feelings of frustrations in some populations, including your own, with the slowness sometimes of this process. So is it time now for Moldova to be separated from Ukraine in this process?
Decoupling or coupling is one of the issues that Russia uses in its narratives against countries that would like to get closer to the EU. This is the time for both us and Ukraine to move forward and to be led to move forward with our reform paths.
Finally, Minister, before I let you go, just one question, because I know several officials in Romania have been floating the prospect, have been floating the prospect of unification with Romania as an alternative. Is this something that you could contemplate?
Our only plan is to get ready for EU membership by 2030. This is what we have societal support for, and we're working hard to make that objective a reality.
Okay, Minister Gerasimov, thank you so much for joining us on Euronews. Remember, those talks on both Ukraine and Moldova and also in Montenegro are taking place in Luxembourg later in the day. For now, back to you.
OK, Mary Gwynn, thank you so much there. And of course, to your guest. Now, the EU's tech chief has fired a warning about the risks of relying on US tech companies, especially in the areas of cybersecurity and defence. This as European investors and researchers fear that Europe will be cut off from frontier AI models. Our Jakub Janis has the story.
Washington has just reminded Europe who really holds the power in the age of artificial intelligence.
Winning the AI race will demand a new spirit of patriotism and national loyalty in Silicon Valley.
And last Friday, one of the AI race leaders, Anthropic, pressed the kill switch on its most advanced models, Fable 5 and Mythos 5. And following a surprise directive from the Trump administration citing national security, the company was forced to ban all non-US citizens from its frontier technology. And for Europe, this is a long overdue wake-up call. But will it actually wake up? Across the continent, research labs, tech firms, and even some hospitals have spent the last year piloting these US-made systems for key operations. Now they have learned that their digital infrastructure can be unplugged overnight. And European leaders across the spectrum, from France's far-right presidential candidate Jordan Bardella to the European Commission's own spokesperson Thomas Reynier, are in rare agreement arguing that nations that do not develop and control their own AI models will remain entirely dependent on the choices of foreign powers. What's even more interesting, earlier this month the European Commission announced its ambitious plan for European strategic autonomy in technology. Anchored by the new Cloud and AI Development Act, the plan aims to triple Europe's data center capacity, build massive AI gigafactories, and push for the secure open-source alternatives. However, Europe is currently trapped in a massive compute gap. While the EU scrambles to build infrastructure, the sheer scale of investment from the US giants dwarfs European efforts, and relying on moonshot projects alone might be simply too slow. Another option could be a coalition of the middle powers. By teaming up with nations like the UK, Canada and Japan, Europe could pool its fragmented computing power, creating a sort of AI insurance policy. However, regardless of what the EU does, it better do it quickly. Otherwise, these sudden kill switches will become a regular feature of the continent's digital future.
Jakub Janis reporting for us there. And now it's time for an update on the FIFA World Cup. The tournament kept us all very busy, of course, this weekend, but especially our sports correspondent, Vincenzo Genovese, who joins us now to bring us up to speed.
Yes, maybe indeed. Good morning. The party is on. World Cup is in full swing. 1.2 billion people watched the first opening game. Million of viewers for the weekend's games. Let's get straight to the results. Group B. Only draws: Canada 1-1, Bosnia and Herzegovina, Qatar, Switzerland, the same result, 1-1. So no leaders in this group. All the teams at 1 point. Group D, we had some surprise. We had Australia beating Turkey 2-0. This was the surprise of the weekend. United States, a very confident and very dominant debut, 4-1 to Paraguay. And so United States and Australia leading the group. Then Group C. Scotland beat Haiti 1-0, quite expected. And then Brazil-Morocco 1-1. This was maybe the most awaited game of the weekend. It was vibrant. Brazil was on the ropes in the first half. They conceded the first goal to Saibari. They conceded many occasions to Moroccans. And they were saved by Vinicius, by a brilliant curling shoot by Vinicius. But, well, the second half was more balanced. But the general impression to me was that Morocco at this moment is better than Brazil.
And Brazil's coach, of course, under pressure, the Italian guy.
Yeah, Carlo Ancelotti is being grilled, he's being criticized by the Brazilian press. Many say that the players he has selected are not good enough. But I'd say let Carlo Ancelotti cook because he knows the job, and it's not uncommon in the history of the World Cup that teams goes deep into the tournament after a poor starting match.
And what about the other European teams?
Well, we had Group F. We have Sweden defeating 5-1 Tunisia. We have 2-2, a thrilling draw between the Netherlands and Japan. And, of course, Group E, the Côte d'Ivoire beat 1-0 Ecuador, and Germany, another awaited match, beat 7-1 Curaçao. I would say an easy match. This reminded me of 2002 when Germany started with an 8-0 to Saudi Arabia.
Indeed, it was an easy one, but of course, highly celebrated. And we can actually get the view from Berlin now and head over to the capital and bring in our correspondent, Laura Fleischmann. Good morning, Laura. Tell us, what is the reaction there to Germany's very good World Cup debut?
Good morning to you too, Maeve and Vincenzo. And well, there was a sense of relief to be felt here in Germany with this amazing success for the German national team. The 7-1 scoreline, of course, reminded us of the game against Brazil, the famous game where Germany also won 7-1. And after yesterday's game, there was a spontaneous car convoy on Kudamm, one of the biggest boulevards in Berlin. And people were very happy about the success, especially since before there wasn't a lot of excitement about this World Cup.
OK, Laura Fleischmann, thank you so much for that. Let's see if the Red Devils do that well. And there's such a buzz tonight in Belgium. Just tell us, what should we look out for now? Tonight we have as we said, the Red Devils. We have Belgium against Egypt tonight, so Brussels is really bracing. We have also Iran debut at 3 a.m. against New Zealand, and let's see how will be the reception in Los Angeles Stadium. And of course, we have also another group, Group H, with Saudi Arabia, Uruguay, and Spain versus Cape Verde. Spain, to me, Maeve, is one of the most favorite teams. They have good organization, good defense. They are very confident after having won the Euro Cup 2 years ago after beating England, France, Germany and Italy. They have a star, a rising star, not anymore a star, Lamine Yamal. I will put Spain together with France as a top favorite, even ahead Argentina for this World Cup. Vincenzo Genovese, thank you so much. It will be indeed a very exciting night tonight. But that does bring this edition of Europe Today to an end. Thank you so much for tuning in. Take care and see you soon on Euronews.